Adventure Ho Illumineers, and welcome back to another episode of the Ducktail Dads. My voice should sound familiar to you, despite missing last week. This is Nathaniel, joined as always by both Mack and Ryan. We have all three Ducktail Dads in place for our final episode of 2025. What a banner year for the Ducktail Dads. This was our first year as a channel, as a podcast creating group. We'll kind of get into that a little bit more in just a bit. But good to be back with you boys both. Glad to be here, kind of finishing off what has been indeed a very fun year. So normally we do start our podcast with our favorite segment, What's New in Your World. We're going to take a little bit of a spin on it today, and we're actually going to talk about your 2025 highlights. So it's in the similar vein of What's New in Your World, being from a personal life and from a Lorcana perspective, right? We always talk about those two things. Looking at the course of 2025 from your personal life and from a Lorcana perspective, what has been your highlights? It could be one each, it could be as many as you want, but just the things that come to mind when you think of like those awesome moments that you're just going to remember of like, these were 2025 moments for me, my family, and or my Lorcana career. Let's have Ryan. You start us.
Yeah, so this is just the year of Lorcana, really, because I started Christmas season of last year, Black Friday season of 2024, and so this has really just been the full foray into the growth of Lorcana from a personal perspective. So on a Lorcana front, I would say highlights would be, I guess, attending my first set championships and doing absolutely dreadfully and getting blindsided by a Ruby Emerald actions deck right away for the first event, and just realizing, I can there's some fine tuning I can make to this list, and then later on in that same set, being able to go to the same event and see the Nathaniel win his champ mat. That was a highlight for sure, and then winning a champ mat of my own at some point in the last year, that was another highlight, and then obviously DLC Milwaukee was just the culmination of Lorcana for 2025. Felt like being in the room. I didn't get to talk to the eventual champion, but knowing that Nathaniel was part of our group talking to the eventual champion, plus pulling an Enchanted and having our Friday night event with our Minnesota friends. It was just, all in all, a great weekend. Meeting a bunch of our fans, meeting a bunch of our listeners at Milwaukee, and talking with everybody there was really, really awesome. All those interactions are very special and cherished, and so thank you for everybody that came up and said hi, as you noticed our t-shirts. Looking forward to the next time we get to go out and we can interact again. Looking forward to seeing everybody again in the future, definitely. From a personal perspective, highlight obviously is growing our family. So we welcomed our second child this year. That was a blast to be able to have that dedicated time off to take care of the newborn and to take care of my wife as she's recovering postpartum. Highly recommend any new parents out there utilize and emphasize those first couple of months, those first few months, and take time off to really make that special and maximize that time away, because it really is once in a lifetime you get to do that, it feels like, with that particular kid, and it's hugely important, if you're not the spouse that birthed the child, to have that opportunity to take care of them too as they recover from that event. Otherwise, on a personal perspective, just making it through the year and making it through the holiday season with relative health intact. So right now, I am probably the least healthy of our crew, and I just have a little bit of extra congestion, which is really nothing, as you all know as parents. If you just have a little bit of a sniffle, that's a good day. So we've been working on a good week so far. So hopefully it sticks this way, and we can maintain this level of health. But all in all, 25 has been an incredible year. Looking forward to 2026 and continuing on in this hobby. A whole ton of memories were made that I didn't even mention with our theme nights and things like that, which are obviously cherished memories too. So I'll turn it over to Mack. What were your highlights from 2025?
Yeah, a couple of highlights. I'm going to start with Lorcana 2. I think obviously this podcast, did we start this in March, I think, time frame? So that was over the course of 2025. But I think within that, this podcast has created a lot of avenues for us to get to know members of our local community. And I think overall that's just been a very big highlight for me. I know we joke that Nathaniel is the golden retriever of the group and likes to talk and meet everyone within the community, but I would consider myself more on the extroverted side too, more so than an introvert, and being able to go out to locals and recognize people and them having them recognize us, and not only just talk about current meta staples of this game, just talking about life, like getting to know people on a personal side too. I think that's been an incredible highlight. Not only the three of us, but I know Evan and Connor too have started to branch out to other members of the community as well. So I think overall that's been a really big highlight from a Lorcana perspective. Also, what happened in 2025, I will never forget our Perkins night. We've alluded to it before on a couple episodes of our podcast. I think it was the not Christmas deck that Ryan faced in his first set champs, but it was that set champ season. It was Azerite C in January of 2025. 4 out of the 5 of us friends went to a set champs, and all 4 of us got top 8. So we all got the promo card. And we all celebrated at Perkins, late night Perkins run, just chatting not only Lorcana, but that was also the night where I told you guys of my pursuit and my wife's pursuit of adopting my oldest son. And that's my personal highlight, is that the finalization is done. Earlier this month in December, he is officially within my family legally now. So that's wonderful. It took a lot of work, 6 months, and as a result, which is totally fine. As a result, my Lorcana life kind of took a back seat over the course of the last 6 months, and but I couldn't be more thankful for it. The last, I think, Lorcana-related thing for sure is DLC Milwaukee. I think that was we're talking about year-end review here, but ultimately I think that was the culmination of our personal, like, Ducktail Dad 2025 was that experience in Milwaukee, and I know we want to make more of those events in the future. I don't think any of us are making it to Richmond, so sorry those who want to see us there, but it's something on our mind. Hopefully Indianapolis is something that we can pursue. If not, DLC Season 3, whenever those are announced, that's something that we want to look into as well. So I think overall, those are the recaps for me for my 2025. Nathaniel, how about you?
So, it's hard to go after those two from a personal life perspective. Sheesh. I think from a personal perspective, I'll just say that 2025 definitely brought me closer to all 3 of my kids. I think for any other parents out there, right? Like, as you have really small children, it can sometimes be hard to connect with them if they just seem like they're always kind of cranky or just need something else, or they just can't sit still for longer than about 5 seconds, right? You can never really have these longer moments with them, I guess, or connect over any specific thing. And I think as their personalities start to come out more, you start to figure out what they like. They start to maybe observe the things that you as their parent like, and maybe they take an interest in that too. So, for example, I think it's been really cool to see my oldest kid take up fishing the same way that I really enjoy it. I don't go a ton, but it's an activity I really cherish, and connecting on that level with him has been really fun. And all 3 of my kids have liked sledding a lot this last month. I think I've talked about that in just about every episode I've been on, because it's been a big part of the whole month of December for us. I've spent probably 8 hours building this monstrosity in our side yard, which I'm excited to show you guys, actually. It's quite fun, even for adults, if your back can handle it. But I think just being able to connect with my kiddos a little bit more as they've continued to get older. I say older, right? They're all still quite young, but I think that's been a huge thing for me that I've really enjoyed about 2025. From a Lorcana perspective, definitely the stuff that you guys talked about, right? Like Ryan and I both getting our set champ mats felt really cool. The joint kind of, we all got, the promo card. Those have been really, really cool. And I think the wider community thing, I think that's really, there's 2 ways that I feel about it. There's the connection piece that Mack just touched on, right? As the resident golden retriever, I love that we can go to places now and start chatting with people who like I do know by name and they know me. I went to one of my only like weekly events that I've been to. We've talked about this at length, right? Like it can be really hard for us to get out on a regular basis to play the game. We try to prioritize the set champ season, right? We try to go to events together where possible. But like just going to like a weekly league night, depending on timing and location, it can be really hard to fit into the schedule. And I got to go to one about a week and a half ago, and it was really fun. Like I got to connect with people, and yes, I did happen to win the event, like win the weekly thing, but that was cool. But like what I found to be just as enjoyable was like talking to people who I knew and everything, and that was really fun for me. But I think the other part that I think about that's really quite humbling about 2025 is seeing the following that we have. I think we talked about how much we've appreciated the listeners out there, but like seeing some of the statistics in the Spotify Wrapped was really quite amazing to see that for 32 people we're their number one show, for 90 people were in their top 5 shows. Like that's really cool to know that we have something to say that people actually care to hear about, right? Because this podcast, like we talked about this, we're not like the most competitive professional level players, right? We don't travel to every big event. We're 3 very competitive guys. We grew up in competitive sports, and that's part of our nature. But this podcast has been more about the joy of the game, connecting with using the game as a connection point with the community, and also like play good cards and play well if you can, right? So I think it's been really fun to like see that kind of find its own way over the last 9 months. I'm really excited to see what happens in 2026 with both this and the game. So that probably leads me into the next segment, which was y'all had put the question out there of your favorite holiday tradition and the Christmas deck feedback. So I'll start with the favorite holiday tradition. I would just say I think I really like being able to take a step back from the normal kind of, call it the weekly grind, right? You get to kind of into like a rhythm. Maybe it's you do a podcast every Monday night with 2 of your best friends, or maybe it's, your work schedule is a certain type of way, right? And you kind of get into this rhythm. And I think what's really cool about the holiday season is it interrupts that to a degree, and then you get to kind of decide what things you're going to do with it. And I think every year that my kids have been around, I have really tried to prioritize spending as much time with them as possible during those off days of the holiday season. And we've definitely got to spend a lot of time together. Like I said, I have frozen my limbs sledding, and I'm being the cool dad that like goes down the hill too and spends all this time, making the luge for them on our hill. So I think for me it's about getting the family time. Not just like the big family stuff, right? I think people think of like, holiday season, big family get-togethers, and I'm very fortunate that much of my family is in the state of Minnesota, so they're very close. So I do get that, but I think for me, the favorite tradition has really been just like leaning in a lot with my kiddos and being like, whatever you want to do all day, let's do that. That's been really cool because there's just not as much stuff on the calendar, right? We can't fill the schedule with. I mean, yes, you could, but there's less stuff going on already because it is the holiday season and places are closed. There's not events happening then for anything, so that's definitely I think a highlight for me. The deck list feedback. I mean, anytime you're talking Christmas colors, I am definitely in. I mean, I think the biggest thing I thought when I saw that deck was like, oh, a Maui Half Shark. This must be an action deck, and there like weren't that many actions. So that was like my first like feedback piece to there, but I would love to just run that deck at like an event and just like see what happens, because I like who know nobody knows what you're doing with that.
Yeah, it was definitely a high roll deck for sure, and I think Ryan scraped it together probably 2 hours before we started recording. But yeah, that was, I think the first thought too was like the Half Shark. I think I alluded to like maybe there's some more actions that can be added to that. I also, I think I mentioned the Robin Hood Sharpshooter is fun in that Christmas deck, at least in my experience when I've tried it too. But yeah, like I said, we can't we can't knock Ryan too hard, right? When he's just pulls something together to match the holiday theme within 2 hours of when we're starting to record. So, other than that, yeah, it was fun. It was fun to discuss that, some of that off meta, and something totally different that none of the three of us typically play, other than me playing Maui Half Shark. It's really nothing that we do. So it was fun to see that aspect of it, and just I think I enjoyed that too. It brought me a lot to like thinking about Milwaukee when I switched to Emerald Sapphire. Sure, I was used to Sapphire, but it was a totally different style of deck or style of control than what I was used to, and it brought me back to thinking about how I started crafting that deck. I can imagine just jumping into something that you're totally unfamiliar with. It can be fun, even if it's a deck you're never going to play. It's still fun to kind of see what pot you're mixing together, and something that I think the three of us envy Connor's ability, our friend Connor, about doing. So it's fun to do that from time to time and see what you can come up with.
I also think there's something to just like running something totally different and just like seeing how it can surprise an event, right? Like I think the big surprise of this past season has been this, combo deck of Amber Amethyst, right? And now that we've had time to see it, study it, whatever, like people kind of know like what it's trying to do. But like put yourself in the shoes of the player who was like at that event, and like that starts to like unfold in front of you, and you're like, what's really happening here? And by the time you've kind of sorted that out, like the game's over. And for some events like that, right, that's all you need, right, is that like surprise aspect, and you could create some damage. So I think for me, I would love to, if I can tweak, maybe that's a goal for 2026, tweak the deck, or build up the deck tweaking or building skills so that I could like build something of my own creation and run it and have it not do extremely poorly. That would be really cool. I don't have to win a big event with it. Just like bring it and like surprise some people and like do some cool stuff. It doesn't need to be any crazy combos.
So you're saying win a 25K is not on your bucket list for 2026. Got it.
No, I'm okay with not doing that.
I do think that something that is interesting to me and has piqued my interest, I didn't partake in it this set, but I thought it would be a fun idea, is what former guest of the podcast, Christian, has done this set with taking a starter deck and his like sealed journey. So if anybody's interested in following that, he's posted those on YouTube. I don't have his YouTube handle handy right now, so apologies that I can't plug it. But he's effectively taking one of the starter decks and then just taking a sealed pathway. So whatever he pulls out of some certain packs he has a certain price point he can spend every week to upgrade the deck and kind of build those deck crafting or deck tweaking skills. So that's something you could consider for next set, Nathaniel, is pick a starter deck, start there, and only do a sealed journey through the set. Something to keep in mind. Because there won't be a core constructed event, major core constructed event outside of set championships until September? October? I don't know. Because the summer DLC will be Infinity in the United States. So if you're not traveling abroad to find a core constructed DLC, or you're not going to a major core constructed event like PPG or Charlie's Collectibles or anywhere else, you got to find some way to keep core constructed interesting. So that might be a good way to do that. Just a thought, which kind of transitions us into our next little piece that we wanted to talk about. I'll hand it over to Mack to intro it, but just wanted to put that out there. And Nathaniel, you have something to add quick.
I do just want to quick add it's Christian Young Lorcana. He's doing a sealed only challenge with you'll see in the video if you go find it. But yeah, I love that idea, Ryan. I think that'd be super cool. And if you can get out to some more local events, you kind of get some packs for your performance, and that's how you can continue to build it.
Sweet. So as Ryan alluded to, we are starting to get into some recent discussion points within the Lorcana community, specifically related to the Curly Cards video that dropped. Today is December 29th, 2025. That's the day we're recording it. Earlier today, Curly Cards, YouTube channel Curly Cards, his name is Joe Curly, is a popular content creator within Lorcana. He also goes by the name of Spessy for those of you who might recognize him with that name. He dropped a video today about kind of Lorcana at its current state and laid out a set of like constructive feedback, kind of mild criticism of where we're at with the state of the game. And he had a list of items of where he thinks Lorcana needs to improve, or at least in his opinion. I think we want to address a little bit of it, or at least have our perspective on it. We're not going to go through everything in detail. We will go through his kind of 7 major bullet points, and then each of us will react to 1 or 2 of those, however we see fit. One that kind of resonated with us personally, and then we'll move on to the kind of the set champ side of this episode. But I think it's important for us to not only stay dialed in what we want to do here, but also for the greater community, and this is what the greater community is talking about. So in that video, Curly Cards Joe laid out 7 major critiques of the current state of Lorcana. Kind of the higher discussion content creator group tends to see kind of this weird trend with the game right now. I know we have some maybe different opinions of the game right now, but we'll get into that too. But this is his list, and then we'll go and react to a couple of these. Number 1 thing that he pointed out was there needs to be more incentive for local play, whether it's a local just weekly level, monthly level, set level, or set champs level. There needs to be more incentive for players to go out to locals. Step 2 was not only increase the local scene, but there also could be a bigger connection with that local scene to bigger Lorcana events such as a DLC. And so the example he laid out is maybe there's some sort of winning ticket system, whereas if you were to win a set champs, maybe that gets you either an entry into the upcoming DLC, or maybe it gives you a better chance or incentive to then sign up for a DLC. That was kind of his idea and what his point was there. His third point was there just needs to be more DLC events, bigger events. It's something that's been touched on before. 4, there needs to be more support for the Infinity, what do we call it? Game style, gameplay. More support for that. 5, he was very critical on the Fabled set. He hopes that the way that he said rotation's important, but the way it was presented in Fabled, he hopes there's not another set like Fabled. And 2 points he specifically for this one is there were a lot of vanilla reprints that he just disliked. And for rotation, the reprints chosen, in his opinion, should push more for like thematic decks. So your reprints should maybe be more Frozen. You should have a lot of Frozen cards specifically, or a lot of Aladdin cards, or a lot of Lion King cards, rather than just random vanilla cards that no one's going to use anyway. That was kind of his point. 6 was starter decks. Starter decks could be better the way they're currently constructed. In his opinion, just isn't hitting the mark. And then lastly, kind of on the greater focus to theme decks, but he really highlighted this point again. When new sets are released, he would like to see those sets have a greater focus on those themes rather than on the colors. He feels right now the game is kind of just, you have a lot of purple cards, you have a lot of blue cards, smash them together, and you just pick the best ones, and that's kind of the meta. And it has no like thematic relation to, it's just, you have a genie and then you have an Elsa character. Like there's no theme there. He's hoping that like the meta kind of revolves into themes. One thing that he said has really hit the mark in this though, he kept making the point about the current dogs list. The Lady and the Tramp, Amber Emerald, like that's very much a Lady and the Tramp deck, and it's a meta deck. He wants to see more decks that resolve around those themes rather than what it's currently feeling like right now is just 2 good colors paired together, rather than trying to build a deck based on a theme. So those are the 7 kind of things. I don't know. I'll let you guys raise your hand, and then whoever wants to take it first. If you have a reaction to 1 or 2 of these that you feel like is important. Again, we're not going to like sit here and like critique Joe specifically, but maybe add to it, or maybe be like, I don't really feel the same way, and here's the reason why. So Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. So positive point, kind of adding to his point and amplifying it is more DLC events, obviously. More big events in more local markets to make it more accessible for more players across the country. I do think expediting the rollout of their CCQ program, where they're offering like additional support to a handful of events across the countries and across the world at certain venues, it makes it feel like there is this like additional opportunity and something else to pay attention to along the way between DLCs. So I do support that. I do appreciate that they were able to expedite that rollout process and get those tournaments in place for sure. But obviously, with how much fun and how entertaining and how great DLC Milwaukee was, just having more opportunities for more people to experience that, or selfishly for me to experience that again, I'm all on board with supporting and amplifying that message. And I think Ravensburger is aware of that, and the team, competitive play team, is well aware of that. And I believe they've alluded to the fact that they're already exploring that and looking into both larger events, so expanding the field from 2,000 players to 4,000 players, and also more of them throughout the competitive season. So I'm excited and looking forward to whatever those announcements are when they make their way to the public. So one that I don't agree with, or one that I feel differently than Curly Cards or Joe or Spessy, is the thematic of the sets. The comparison that was being made was to Riftbound, which is a brand new trading card game with a very popular IP in the League of Legends space. From what I understand, what I kind of have it broken down in my head is there's Magic, and Magic has Commander, and then the other type of Magic, which I don't know what it's called. But Commander is like you have one very specific card that kind of defines your deck, and that's like a very powerful card or whatever it is. And then you build your deck around that, and it's all kind of along that same theme. And the other type of Magic is just this like piles of good cards. And so Lorcana is more in that piles of good cards. Riftbound is more in the like leader format or commander format, where you have a very specific card and everything's built around that. One thing that I will note is Riftbound is a young game. It's relatively new. They are having very successful and popular events, and I love that. I love seeing success of another trading card game. That's awesome. Kudos to them for having a successful rollout in that sense. I will say that it is much easier to have specific themed deck lists when you have a young game and a limited card pool. So with that in mind, thinking back to like sets 1 and 2 of Lorcana, I was not involved in the game, but I'm thinking about the cards that came from those sets, and they did feel, in my mind, they do feel relatively thematic. Specifically, the color I'm most familiar with is the purple cards. So you have your Mims and your Merlins, and those were all very themed around that one specific movie, and that was a large majority of the power level in many of the Amethyst decks for the first 6 sets, right? And so from that standpoint, it is easy to have those type of themes when you have a very small card pool to pull from. Kind of, doubling back on myself a little bit, I would like to see, it would be obviously fun to see like full themed decks being successful and supported. That does narrow the like audience though for this card game in general. And so I think having good cards in each of the franchises is much more important in my mind than a specific franchise being very strong. Because then you're really like pigeonholing that if you're a Frozen fan, you're going to play this specific deck no matter what, whether you like the cards or not. And if you don't like Frozen, for whatever reason, you're like fully opposed to Frozen, but you really like the mechanics that deck represents, then you're just turned off from the game entirely and you're going to go somewhere else. So I do like the fact that they have multiple franchises represented with very strong cards in the same colors, because I think that's part of the fun like fantasy for me, is like thinking like what would it sound like to have Tramp and Ursula sing Under the Sea together, and just like what would that sound like in general, just like the howling of a dog and an octopus lady singing Under the Sea that Sebastian makes this like Jamaican jazz theme. Like that just is like that's part of the fantasy fun for me, is just like these the interactions you would not see in a traditional Disney IP that you get to like sort of quote unquote see by playing these cards from different franchises in the same deck. So those are the two that I wanted to touch on. I'll pass it over to whoever wants to step up next.
Yeah. So funny side note, that last point you made, Ryan, had me completely thinking about how many times my wife has absolutely roasted me when I've come out of my office after doing like a webcam playtest with one of you guys. And she's like, "Oh yeah, were you singing about your strength of a raging river or whatever?" And it's so funny because that card is so good and I always have it in my steel deck. But on a note about this, in response to this, I think I'm gonna focus more on the first 4 points because I think those are all really intertwined. So I'll start with the fact that I talked a little bit about this on the last podcast that I was on, with incentivizing local play. I think they have to do more there. There's lots of ways they could do this, but make it worthwhile for people to go to locals, and I think people will show up, right? If it's I understand there's something in the works here with like taking certain like attendance and they're going to like track that more. But like, I'm hoping that that's in the interest of like very soon we're going to be distributing something to the stores that are like promoting league play. But like, you need to have the things in place to like get people to come for that. And I think it's especially relevant right now because of, to your point, Ryan, the release of Riftbound. Like when I went to that local event, just like that weekly league night a week and a half ago, that there was a lot of discussion about Riftbound. Like people had their cards with them at the Lorcana event. They had their Riftbound stuff as well. And they were talking about Riftbound. Like it's a competitor, right? And you could definitely play both. I'm sure tons of people will play both, but it's another thing to potentially take away from a local community, especially if there's not enough incentive to keep going to locals for Lorcana specifically. So I think they have to start there. And I think one of the ways that they can do that with incentive for local play is to do more with Infinity. Mac, I know you weren't able to attend the Whole New World weekend, but golly, that was so fun. It was fun to play different decks that have been, not legal in constructed play in a number of months, and just like see how those decks have changed, right? Because new cards have entered the card pool. You can now play an Aerial on turn 2 in Steel Song. Like, you can do these like cool things, right? And that was really interesting. And I think there are people out there, I think part of the point on this is like they had built theme decks that were spanning sets 1 through 8, or, could build a theme deck that stretches across sets 1 through 10, and you can't play it in constructed. So your more casual players in that respect could play those types of theme decks they want to play. But you also, I think, there's cards that people like to play that they can't play anymore, and it's just a different game, right? Like, I talked to one of our local players, and he's like, a lot of my gameplay was really based around be prepared. Like, the whole game plan was basically built around that card. Like, when am I going to play that? And then, like, kind of what follows thereafter. And so, like, yes, there's some learning opportunity there to, like, redefine, like, how you play the game, for sure. But, like, allow people those outlets to, like, tinker around with how, all those old cards would change and kind of mash with the new stuff. And I think if you do that, more support for Infinity, and you promote the local play, that will kind of, both of those things will kind of promote each other. And then I think by doing those things right, and then also adding more DLC events, I think the whole hype around the game is increased, right? Because you have your local options, you want to go to them because you're going to get good stuff by going to those, and then you have accessible and hopefully plentiful larger events that you could potentially build towards as well. That keeps people talking about the game and interested and wanting to compete, I think, by just making it happen more often, right? Like, Ryan, to your point, like, you just reminded me of this. It's like kind of scary that like the biggest like core constructed event after DLC Richmond is like 8 or 9 months. Like, that's just too long. So I think it's promoting the game more in those outlets, I think would go really far. The other stuff, I think they're really good points, but I think if we can focus on those first 4 things, I think the rest of it it doesn't feel as bad.
So just to clarify, I had not pieced this together, the fact that there was not another core constructed event, until I watched Curly Card's video, and he said, or they said, yeah, hey, there's not going to be another event for core constructed, a major event, until it's not even announced yet when that major core constructed event will be, other than these Charlie's Collectibles, PPG, the like mid-tier events, the other TOs that are organizing tournaments for Core Constructed, which those might flip to Infinity too when the Infinity DLC is ramping up. So really there's going to be, just set champs to look forward to. And maybe, who knows, maybe Ravensburg will come out with an announcement that those are also going to be Infinity set championships for that set. So really it'll be all flipping into Infinity focus. We'll see where it goes, but I had not pieced it together until and Curly Cards pieced it together for me and made me realize, like, wow, that's a very good point. There is not Core Constructed support after DLC Richmond in the United States for a very long time. If you go to other countries, then you definitely have that Core Constructed support for the major events, or you go to some of the mid-tier events or the other tournament organizers that are putting on major events, then you can get that Core Constructed fix. But yeah, DLCs other than such and maybe set championships, we'll see how things flip around. But I had not pieced it together until Curly Cards pieced it together for me.
Yeah, I think for me, the point there is, like, if you introduce rotation, like, have a really good plan in place for, like, how you're going to take those divergent routes and support both, right? Like, how are we going to continuously support the people who have been with us from the beginning and want to play those older cards, or how those decks have changed and morphed over time and will continue to change with new cards being added to the card pool. And then also, of course, the current kind of Core Constructed stuff as that's ever changing as well. Because, like, Ryan, you made that point, right? Like, if a bunch of stuff flips over to Infinity, that'll make some people happy. That'll also make other people not so happy who just, like, have been investing in, like, hey, these are the in rotation current important cards, right? So I think there's a world where you can really effectively promote both of those paths, but, like, there needs to be stuff on the calendar that's doing that for both.
Yeah, I think Spessie's point was the fact that you already decreased the number of DLC events from Season 1, both in Europe and North America. I know we've discussed at length when this was announced in July, like, in order to game the at least for the next season, in my opinion, in order to grow the game globally, you need to pull from those areas and then you can build up, because you need to, like, establish a foundation. And I know Brazil and China and Japan, right? Like, you need to establish a foundation in those, and then you can see where the popularity is and then build up from there, right? I think that's just kind of like their basic business sense. But I think the point that he made that resonated with me and that we discussed here is, like, there's no more Core Constructed, and he felt like you already took away, and now you're taking away more by essentially replacing one of those 3 DLCs with an Infinity main stage, rather than having 3 Core Constructed, and then in addition to that, a specific DLC Infinity. Essentially, he's getting to the same point. We just need more DLCs, right? Because, like, then it's just 4 DLCs, and then we're having the same conversation about feeling replaced that the 4th one was Infinity and not Core Constructed. So, like, you could have that argument as it continues to layer up, right? But I think ultimately his point was, like, we just need more bigger events. And to be quite honest, like, we got together and watched the stream of Worlds. Like, we brought our families together. We watched our kids play in the yard, and we were streaming on a laptop outside on Nathaniel's porch to watch Worlds. And, like, we weren't the only ones, like, celebrating that. Like, everyone all over the country and all over the world were, like, getting really excited for that event. And I'll get into my point talking about Fabled, but, like, even in the Fabled meta where there was a little bit of negativity, right? Like, I think when we were at Milwaukee, I felt so much excitement from people there that were, like, just excited to be there and be at a DLC. Like, those events are so fun. I think, again, where we see a lot of the criticism as I've, like, started to browse in discussion boards within the community, like, we see a lot of criticism from, like, the really, really top players, like the top 1% players. And those are the ones that we heard a lot of the criticism too in Milwaukee. But for the most part, I think, like, everyone was just excited to be there, excited to be a part of the event. So to your point, like, these big events create a lot of steam, and, like, we haven't had that steam, but now we're starting to build to Richmond, and I know I'm going to watch Richmond, right? So I think that's his point. I want to touch base that what we didn't talk about yet is the starter decks. I think he makes a great point. I think the starter decks are just useless, to be quite frank, right now. Like, the only one in recent memory that felt okay, ironically, was one of the Fabled decks, and that was the Powerline one. Like, you got some good cards there that maybe at the time could have built a decent Song Powerline deck, right? But, like, his point was, like, instead of, like, having a starter deck with its main card being a single super rare, really not that hard to get when you get a box, right? Like, maybe you should have more play sets of these super rares or rares, and then you'll entice people to buy these starter decks. Because from a printing and Ravensburger perspective, like, this is just ink on paper, and it's going to cost them the same amount of money to put that ink on paper. It's really the secondhand market where you see a lot of those prices rise up and down on TCG, and that's really nothing to do with, Ravensburger directly. So it's like it builds the secondhand market builds interest and gets more interest into the game, right? So like I can see a world where like, yeah, we need to have better versions of starter decks, especially at its price point and what you get for it. Currently most on average they're $20. You get this starter deck that's useless in one pack. Are you really getting your money's worth? I see still, there aren't really any first chapter ones still available, but I still see Rise of the Floodborn starter decks in my local scene. So it's like no one's interested in these, right? So we gotta revise this, and I can kind of see his point to that. And maybe adding themes to those starter decks is a great way to do that. I don't know. But ironically, talking about the excitement of Milwaukee in the Fable meta, and then also talking about like Milwaukee, and that's the Fable meta was one of the ones that actually had a decent starter deck. His point about like having never another set like Fabled, that was pretty harsh in his video, in my opinion, but I think there's some merit there, in my opinion, too. At the time when the reprints were announced, this was about a month before Fable dropped, we had a conversation with other locals here. I think Christian and a lot of other people on here. And Christian made it at first I was like, it's kind of weird that they're reprinting some of these vanilla cards. And Christian made a good point. Like, you kind of still need some of those to have like good sealed and draft cards, right? So then he kind of jumped me over to that line. But now after watching this video, I think I'm back over to I think you make a good point. Like, rotation is such a critical part in this game, and you need to hit on those reprints. And the vanilla reprints just ain't it, right? Like, the Honey Wizard Enchanted's really cool, but other than that, it's kind of buns, right? And other reprints like that. So being more conscious of like what you're trying to do from picking reprints, I think they need to hit on that the next rotation cycle, or at least do a better job of that. I think he makes a good point. Not to because in Fabled the meta felt. I think that was the lowest that I've heard from the community in terms of like excitement for the game, even though rotation was overall going to be healthy for the game. The cards that were reprinted, and that was also the Dumbo meta, like all of that, I think a lot of people just clashed. And I can understand the frustrations really since Fabled. And I've really enjoyed Whispers because I think they're catching up. But like, I can understand where a lot of that criticism specifically comes from their efforts on rotation and choosing those reprints. So I think they need to hit next rotation cycle. And I'm very much in aligned with his point on that.
I would offer a counterpoint, Mac, that what Christian also mentioned when we were talking about the rotations when they happened was that he was excited for the game to power down, right? For sets 7 and 8, the major meta decks didn't really change all that much because there was just so much already packed into those 60 card lists that there wasn't really room to fit much else unless it was extremely good or provided a very strong draw engine or something along those lines. So because Fabled intentionally powered down the metagame for Core Constructed, I think is why I'm feeling like Whispers in the Well is such a breath of fresh air. Because Fabled was, yes, very slow, very methodical. It was very powered down compared to Reign of Jafar, but it needed to drop the baseline so we could build back up. and feel the impact of the new cards that are being printed. And one of the fun things about Whispers now is that it's actually a full set of 200 new cards, as opposed to the reprint set with Fabled, where every card is like fresh and new, and there's an opportunity to maybe develop a game plan around some of these more unique cards and see how that impacts the game in the meta. So like something like the Amber Amethyst deck never comes to fruition if we don't have the Fabled rotation right before it powering down the game to allow for the innovation to happen on top of that baseline, right? We pretty much, if you think about it in baking terms, I don't know why my brain just went there, but we had like a fully baked apple pie and at the end of Reign of Jafar, and with Fable you brought it down just to the crust. You just have the crust left over, and now we're going to put in the filling and put on the toppings on top of that. Whether you like whipped cream or not, that is neither here nor there for this discussion. That being said, you are adding on toppings through the next few sets as we get back up to a full baked apple pie with or without whipped cream.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I want to make my point clear. Like, I'm very much in alignment with the power down idea, but I think powering down to a set of cards that feel fun together rather than just a random smattering of cards. I think that's where the frustration lies. It's just like, why do we have so many vanilla cards? Why can't we at least have powered down cards with weird abilities? And then I think this goes to his thematic point. Like, let's just have some Frozen and Aladdin, all these different themes that might be a powered down level or version of what we once had. But at least builds excitement for people to build decks based on movie themes, for example. I think to your point about like your point previously about like not having themes, I think the one counterpoint to that too is just like the Lady and the Tramp deck is a meta deck and is really good, and I alluded to that, but that's not the only Ambered Emerald deck that's still very good. There are like 3 iterations of that deck that are good. There's the Chromacon version, there's the Circle of Life version, there's the Under the Sea version. So like I think you can still branch out within a color combination. And granted, I get that like there are just more of those cards right now, and we'll only build up the card pool in order to do that for other colors as well. But like I think being more direct on what you're trying to do with your reprints, even if you're still intending to power down, which is totally fine, at least pick some fun themes that then people can then work from, I guess, is the main point. And I think that's the point that I'm aligned with Curly Cards on his recent video.
I would make one other point here, and it's in response to the sets having a greater focus on themes versus like good colors. I think I would personally like to see this tweaked a little bit. I remember ahead of Fabled, we did this thought exercise of like, what's your prediction of like what's going to change with the release of Fabled? And I think Connor had this like hot take of like the ink colors will be redefined, right? Like singers will be in Ruby, and like, we're going to change around some of the identity. I think what we have observed more recently is like, Mack, you specifically mentioned like Amethyst, Sapphire, mash them together and like make good stuff, right? I think locking enough of a certain element of the game behind a single color is what tends to become, I think, at times frustrating for people. So like if purple is like the card draw color and like everything else has like very poor card draw options, like that's not really ideal. And I think pre-rotation, there were enough other ways for like different colors to find card draw in some capacity that it made it so like you wouldn't just select purple by default if like that was your kind of goal. You could still find ways to get cards. And then like Sapphire being like the ramp color, like can we find other ways to like have some sort of, maybe it's still some sort of like thematic way to do that. Like I know green is oftentimes like this one that sort of like punishes the thing that the other deck's doing, right? Like Clarabelle is like this, like, well, they have lots of cards, I get lots of cards. Oh, they have lots of ink, I'll use Webby and get free ink that way, right? Like there's like green is kind of this like exception color, but the other colors tend to like have a thing. And if they don't have like a core element to a card game, in this one, like inking or card draw, right? Like that can kind of feel, I think, bad. So I think finding some ways to like thematically give other colors these very important powers of the game. Like, a great example of this, what I'm trying to get at here, is like the Scar card from Steel. Like, this whole, like, you're gonna banish an ally, you're gonna get some strength, you're gonna draw some cards and discards. Like, it's within like the Steel, I don't know, identity in some capacity, right? And I watched a video that Christian, who we've plugged earlier on the podcast tonight, like when he got that out and like had built like his seal deck kind of around certain things that the Scar could do, it was really good. And like he was drawing cards and he was doing, and it was like amazing, like what that could do. But it's like, that's one card in Steel that can like actually draw. And I don't think there's like a whole lot of others. Like, yeah, Doc is in there. There's actually a few other ones in Steel. That's probably not the best example. But what I mean to say is, like, do more stuff like that, right? Like, do stuff in the vein of that, like your Docs and your Scars and, like, in the other ink colors to make it so it's not just like, oh, if you want to draw cards, you got to play purple. Because I think that's where, like, the frustration right now is, like, it's like, are you going to play purple or are you going to play something that punishes purple? And so, like, that's because I think so much of the card draw has been locked behind that since Fabled. So
yeah, and I want to clarify Spessie's point just to make sure I quote him correctly. I think your point about like cards having their like inherent mechanic themes, like purple is the card draw, sapphire is the ramp. I think he doesn't like that, and I think he understands the frustration with that. I think what he was getting at is being able to have more deck options on like the character's other like flavor list. So like you reference Scar and the Allies deck. Like, there are Allies decks, there are Detective decks, there are Puppies decks, there are things like that. I think, and there are when the dwarves were released for Snow White, like there were dwarves decks or knights. That's what they are. There are knights. So like, I think he wants to see a greater extension of like those type of decks and focusing on the kind of what the subtext rather than of the character or of the card, rather than just like, hey, purple's supposed to be draw, so all these cards should just be draw, right? You know what I mean? So I think that was more of his focus, and I can understand that perspective too. Maybe that's something that Ravensburger wants to move towards. I don't know, but I get the argument. I don't know if I totally agree with it, but I think it'd be fun to see more of those themes, and then I think that would excite people to get more talking about his first point, like at a local level, is kind of his point.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Mac, I like that is his point about like using more of those like ally builds or knight builds. Like, I think that's really cool. I just think there's another kind of other issue of like locking identity behind ink, so much so that we've seen so far, where if we can break out of that a little bit, I think it'll really help the game feel refreshing and like other stuff is viable, right? Where Makes it's sense. Like, oh, Ruby has to be carried by Amethyst, otherwise it's unplayable. Like, that's bad. So let's find ways to make the other ones good, and maybe it's lending some of those superpowers of certain ink identities.
2 points I wanted to add on to this discussion. So one being the purple Demona. I think that, to your point, that there are these like discard effects or drawback effects in Steel. I think they could have put the purple Demona as a legendary in a different ink color. Maybe not Steel, because Steel has so many draw options already, but maybe purple Demona would have fit well as like a Ruby card, or maybe as a green card, to provide an additional card draw option in one of those other colors, and then just shifting in a different legendary for purple. But I think that like the exert effect definitely feels purple, the draw effect definitely feels purple, but the drawback effect of the card draw does not feel like purple. Does not feel like an Amethyst card, because a lot of the Amethyst cards are just draw a card. You draw cards, your opponent does not draw cards. Amethyst is definitely trying to win a card advantage battle, or a hand advantage battle, rather. So I think that would have been an opportunity for them to shift it. Nonetheless, it is a Amethyst legendary. It is a very strong Amethyst legendary. You get to draw a lot of cards, add fuel to your fire, exert your opponent's whole board, and take advantageous trades. The second point, not to throw too many jabs, but if they had reprinted Big Sisu, I think this would be a totally different discussion. I think that there would be much less discord among the community, especially among our Ruby stan Ruby Sapphire stan, a resident Ruby Sapphire stan Mack, where maybe it's not that big of an issue because I can still just drop Big Sisu on people and be happy for questing for 3.
My points make sense for Big Sisu. You didn't need to do both. You didn't need to do Sisu and be prepared, but they already did they reprinted already the shift targets. So like, what the heck?
It's got to be coming, Mack. Just hold out that hope, and it'll be coming eventually. Maybe in set 14, it'll be coming. I promise.
I'll save my cards just for that.
All right, so I think the next thing worth talking about as we kind of look to close out this episode is we are at set champ season, right? Like we are literally less than a week away from the Whispers set champs. I don't know why it feels like this. Like the last few sets, it just feels like right as we're kind of feeling a little bit comfortable, it's like set champs, and it's like, oh, now you got to like go out and show what you've learned with these new cards and kind of put that learning to the test in a pretty big way. So how are you making it work in your household? Have you started looking at a few? Are you going to try to make a certain number of them? How are you guys preparing for the set champ season?
Well, I think this first weekend on a normal basis, if I didn't have anything going on, this first weekend I think is going to be super popular because most likely a lot of people just have time off work around this time of year. So I think there'll be pretty good turnout with this first weekend. But I do echo your point. Like it just kind of surprised us around the corner, and it's like, blah, we're here, set champs, right? But I'm very much excited. As I've alluded to, I've really liked kind of we did the wave of the power down with Fabled, and now we're ramping back up to what they want to probably have a new iteration and identity of what this game wants to do. And I think Whispers did a perfect example of that, right? And powering up this game. And I'm very excited to see what comes around with Whispers. I think there are more options, which I've alluded to. That's all what I'm about. But in terms of like trying to balance it, it just so happens that my oldest is turning 6. So I already know that I'm basically out of commission for the first 2 weekends. So when it comes to me and my family and my priorities, not happening for me then. But I just know that those last 2 weekends in January, haven't bridged the conversation with the missus yet, but that will happen, and we'll see. I'd like to make it to 2, one of each of those last 2 weekends, and see where it goes from there. I think, as we've alluded to, and very much on brand and theme with what we want to be as Ducktail Dads, family first, but this game is just a fun outlet for us to kind of, nurture that competitive drive that we all still have well into our 30s now. So I want to make that work and have that and really take hold of that competitive drive, because I haven't been able to participate in the last 2 set champs, and I'm definitely going to make one work, hopefully 2, and hopefully the play testing is up to speed when I get to that point. And I don't know, I'm just really excited. This is the most excited I've been in a while for the game, and I think set champs is a perfect way to see what you're made of, so to speak, and get that competitive itch going. So
yeah, man. Mack, you need to tone it down a little bit. The excitement's coming through too much through your voice here. I will say that, to Nathaniel, to your point of it kind of feeling like it surprised us, can you imagine what it would feel like if you were actually going to DLC Richmond? I mean, that is 10 days away. That is nuts to me. Like, I would be sweating, to be quite honest, because respectfully, or rightfully so, Lorcana's taken a back seat during the holiday season, but also then the competitive format is still right around the corner from us. So for set champs, I'm hoping to make at least 2. If I get lucky, maybe getting to a 3rd. We'll see how it goes with timing of everything. Planning some dedicated days off for my wife during this time frame as well, to say like, if I'm gonna do a set champs event, then maybe we can plan a day where like you get just a half day to yourself, or we do like a full family event one of these days or something like that, where I'm taking the lead on a lot of the like parenting burden and a lot of the mental burden on some things to give you a little bit of respite, so that because I know when I'm gone for set champs for 6 or 7 hours at a time, that like that's not an easy load to carry, and I know it's not necessarily something that you want to do alone, because family time is so precious, especially with the young kids, that it's so nice to have the whole family together at all times. It's always a blessing when that happens, and it's also recognized, and we've talked about it before with our personal conversations, that it's important for me to like maintain a competitive outlet, and that's what Lorcana kind of is, without risking the health of my other Achilles in the process. So. Making sure that it's a healthy outlet, and making sure there's kind of some trade-offs in place already to make it manageable, and make sure we're both getting some recharging and resetting time to do the things that we like to do, and making sure that there's some personal time for my wife to do what she wants to do, whether it's reading a book or taking a nap or going out and seeing friends for dinner or whatever it is that she wants to do with that time. Then that's hers to do with how she pleases. That's kind of where we're finding balance in this busy time frame, kind of getting back into set champs, because we took Fabled off from set champs as well, since we were focusing so heavily on DLC Milwaukee. That this is now the first set champ season in probably 5 months that I've actually been participating in. So I'm excited to get back to the local scene and to chat with some of the local players that I haven't seen in a while. And play some fun card games, and play maybe some different decks, maybe some old decks, maybe some old color combinations, maybe some new color combinations. We'll see what we roll out for those events and how we're feeling come day of. But I'm excited, to say the least. I'm extremely excited, and you probably can't hear it in my voice either because it's late at night and I'm exhausted. But I am very excited for the set champ season that is right around the corner, as almost too close, staring you in the face and jump scaring you.
Yeah, if there are two things that make me think of Ryan's Achilles, it's usually the month of January, and anytime somebody asks me if I want to play men's league soccer, I instantly refer to him and say, yeah, I'm not doing that. Yeah, for those who aren't familiar, Ryan did tear his Achilles. I was actually there when it happened. It was not fun. Less fun for Ryan for sure than it was for me, but it's a good reminder. I think from a set champs kind of prep perspective, I think I've been getting better about being proactive, talking about it earlier with my wife, that this is coming up. This is something that is important to me, and she knows that, and giving options. I think in the past I would have maybe said like, hey, these are the days I would love to go play at these events. I think it's kind of nice if, like, we are very fortunate in the sense that the Twin Cities has quite a few game stores that host set champs. So I was able to provide her with like, hey, here's like the full weekend of options, location, the time of it, the price for, entry, if that's of value, right? Like just different info about each one, which one would be like the most preferable. And so that seemed to be effective for me, and just in terms of like talking that through, and then also just being prepared to, like, to your guys' points too, right? Like help make that not feel like a burden on the spouse while you're gone for what amounts to be like can feel like an entire day that you're gone. So yeah, I'm super pumped. I think I'm going to get to play in one this upcoming weekend. That's really exciting. To your point, I think with the fact that it's the opening weekend, it's also the weekend prior to a DLC. We know that a lot of Minnesotans are going to be going to that DLC. It's probably going to be very intense. So I'm going to go in hopefully with moderate expectations about like everything in terms of like how I'll do, etc. But I think it'll just be fun to kind of get back into that, because as we've touched on earlier, we missed the set 9 set champs. Sad tears, more tears, Maldragon. I'm so sorry. But yeah, it'll be fun to get back into it. And, I think the Daisy card's really cool.
Yeah, and I think to your point too, and something that is important for our listeners and how we handle things, Ryan, I really liked your point about like making sure your spouse has time to enjoy their things too within your season. And then Nathaniel, I think that's something I need to implement into my set champ strategy, is presenting the available dates earlier rather than what I tended to do. However, something that seemed to work well for me is like the little things really count. And what I mean by that is that if a set champs, typically locally here, it starts around noon, like letting your spouse sleep in. I handle the kids right away in the morning. And then at about, 10:30 when I need to think about packing and getting ready to go based on how far I need to drive, right? Like, then my spouse will take over. And then when I get home, it's typically around bedtime. So being present during that time when you've been gone for an entire afternoon and into the evening, right? So like, that's just one example, but like the little things really do matter for those of you who are married. And just from my experience when trying to balance the set champ schedule, don't lose sight of that. And I think it goes a long way, at least it has for my partner. So, and my wife has really appreciated that. But I think it's important now that we're really in the season and every weekend is filled up if you want to attend as much as possible. We very much know that we can't attend everything. I know we all like to try and attend at least 2. That's the goal. And if we get that, great. But even just 1, it's just good to get out there. So being grateful for what you do get to, and when you are able to get out there, I think is important. So that's something I learned and just thought of as you two were speaking about your points as well. I think I wanted to make that known before we wrap up on this.
Yeah, it's some of the most exciting time of the season, I think, right? We like to get out for those and get kind of playing with the community in a slightly more competitive format. It's always a lot of fun. So I think with that, gentlemen, we'll kind of get to wrapping on this one. As always, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We are also active on Instagram and YouTube. Leave a comment, like reach out, right? We love interacting with y'all. It's great seeing your thoughts and kind of how you both interact with both our channel as well as the game in general, right? We're learning every day. This game continues to kind of change and mold, and we hope, especially in the vein of this episode, right, that we know the feedback is heard, and we know that there's plenty of really fun stuff on the horizon as we close out 2025 and look to the 2026 Lorcana experience. Hopefully we can have just as many banner ones next year. But without any further ado, gentlemen, let's get the duck out of here.